Okay, actually I'm a little bit out of tune there. So that's an easy way to launch into a lick where you're just leaping up an octave, or for that matter down an octave, and it works the same in reverse. If we're we can go 2 frets down and 2 strings down, okay, and achieve the same thing in reverse. So that's just kind of a recap of what we did last time. So what I want to talk about today is, what do you do with this scale, okay? And the blues is on one hand a very simple style. It's easy to grasp. There's generally your 3 chords, although there are sometimes more than 3 chords. We'll talk about that down the road. And the scale is fairly simple to learn. It fits under the fingers really nicely, and it's really easy to make it fit with the chords. Now that said, the difficulty in blues, or I should say where the talent is required for blues, has to do with, number one, timing, 2, creativity, 3, tone, and related to tone, I would say number 4 is touch, okay? It's not enough just to have your blues progression and run up and down the scale. Fast or slow, that just would obviously get really boring after a while. Blues involves lots of little things that you do with the notes, and we can kind of group them into basically three different techniques. One is string bending, and you've seen that all over the place. Okay, that's originally came into play in guitar by players who were trying to imitate slide guitar. Okay, slide guitar is where you've got, they either have a metal or a glass slide, and they're not actually fretting the notes, they're just sliding up and down the string, okay? And this bending the string was a way of kind of approximating the sound of a slide, because when you slide, as opposed to going up on frets, you hear it does that brrrr, it's got that bumpy kind of sound. On a slide, it just glides up nice and smooth, just like a bend does. Okay, so that's a huge part of playing guitar, is bending, learning how to bend strings, all right? Now, in their blues scale, we're either bending up to make the note sound like the next note 2 frets away, okay, or sometimes the note 1 fret away, as in our 3rd string, where we've got the 2 in a row here. We'll bend this one to sound like this one. Okay, here will sound like we want it to sound 2 frets away. Same thing here. Here, 1 fret away. And then here. Here, it would be 3 frets away. But that's really almost impossible to do. If you were to bend it far enough, you'd end up, if you went up, you'd end up off the fretboard. If you went down, there's just not really enough bend available. So that one doesn't really get one, neither does this one. Okay, and this one can. Now, as far as fingering the bend, even if the note is played with the little finger when we're doing the scale, when we do a bend, little finger isn't very much help. It's too weak to do much with a bend. So we move the little finger, get the ring finger on that fret, supplement that with the middle finger on the fret before it, and then we make sure you have your thumb up on top to oppose the bends, and you're basically squeezing. It's hard to do at first. The string will dig into the tips of your fingers, so until you get a decent callus built up, it's gonna hurt. And also just the strength in doing this. It takes a little bit of time for the musculature to build up. It's harder to do on an acoustic guitar than it is on an electric, okay? So depending on which one you're playing, or if you do both, start with an electric guitar and just kind of get used to the feel, and then you can kind of work your way up to the acoustic guitar. So if you're playing, doing something with the scale, got the little finger playing the note, but then hop to the ring finger and middle finger for the bend. Okay, now related to the bend is what's often called the tremolo. Okay, and it's what you've seen me do on single notes, where we kind of give it a little shake, and sometimes it's made by shaking back and forth. Okay, just kind of rocking the finger, and sometimes it's made by just doing a quick little bend. Okay, it just depends what kind of sound you want. Each one sounds kind of different, you know. This one's a little quicker and doesn't have as much note change. This one has a little bit more change to the note, and it's a little bit, generally going to be a little bit slower. That is something you want to get used to doing anytime you've got a note of any length. Okay, if you're playing a lick, and then you sit on a note, you don't generally want, you don't want to just have the note hang there. Guitar is one of the instruments, like piano, where once you hit a note, it right away starts dying away. Unlike, say, saxophone, where they can hit a note and they can make it grow because they're putting more air into it, or a trumpet, or any kind of wind instrument, or even violin, because they've got the bow, and the bow can provide constant sound, and it can go louder or softer without breaking the note. On guitar, we can't do that. Well, you can with an electric guitar if you've got a volume pedal, but we're talking just a basic guitar here. So we have to do something with a note with a long note when we hit it, to make it have energy, or make it continue to have energy. And that's what that little bend or tremolo can do. Okay? Otherwise, the note just sits there, dies away, and we lose energy. Okay? Now, so that's related to the bend. So there's the bend, and then it's relative, the tremolo. The other technique that we have is the hammer-on, okay? And that's where you play the note while you're fretting it with one finger and picking it, and then the second note you don't pick. You hammer your finger down, and that's what plays the next note. Okay? Now, related to the hammer-on is the pull-off, and oftentimes they're used together. That's where you have a note, and then you kind of flick the note with your whatever finger while you're fingering another note. So I'm fingering 5th fret and 8th fret with my little finger. I pluck the note, and then I pull my little finger off and pluck the string that way. Okay? You can see you can do that forever. Okay, and that can be done anywhere. It's easiest to do on your first string. It's a little trickier on the inner strings because if you're not careful, you're going to end up playing the next string. The way that's avoided is by letting this finger touch the other string so that it can't play even if you pluck it. Okay? And whereas on the first string you can basically flick straight down towards the floor, on the other strings you kind of have to go down and out, like this way out, okay? And your little finger kind of hooks a little bit into that note. Okay? Now, the way they're used together is like this. You pluck a note, hammer on, and pull off. So I'm only plucking once. And that's what makes that, you've heard that sound before. It sounds like someone's really playing fast, but they're really not. It's just the hammer on. And they can be done repeatedly. And again, this is something also that's much easier on electric guitar, especially if you got the amp cranked up and you got distortion on. It's really much easier to do it that way. But it's good to be able to do it on an acoustic guitar so that when you get to an electric guitar, it's a piece of cake. So those are the three things that are used all the time. And what happens when you kind of combine these three techniques is you don't need a lot of notes to solo with, right? If you've just got this. Okay, I did like 2 bars, and all I was doing was playing the notes on the first 2 strings, just 4 notes. Although if you include the notes I bent up to, that adds some other notes. But I wasn't doing anything all that tricky. And if it was, put together with this backup, you can do a lot with just a few notes there. One of the places where this hammer-on thing can really be handy is at the end of a blues progression. This is a very common kind of thing. So you hammer on these 3, and notice the long note, I give a little shake, and then a little bend to this one, and then I actually cut that note short. I just rested the pick on it. Okay, that's another way you can make the notes sound different, by kind of making some cut off early. Okay, so that's just a way of kind of putting those things together. So that's how you get started with soloing. You just take a string or 2 and practice doing some bends, and practice doing some pull-offs, and practice doing some hammer-ons. Okay, I'm just doing some hammer-ons here. Pull-offs. And a bend. okay? And you just make little tiny melodies, which are often called licks, right? Out of a couple strings and some bends. And the more comfortable you get with those techniques, the more comfortable you'll be incorporating them into longer styled licks, and crossing. Eventually you'll be able to cross strings, so doing something like a okay? So it's not difficult once you get the musculature and the coordination and all that down. But then it's what you do with it, and it's being creative and importantly being in rhythm. Okay, that's absolutely crucial in any kind of music, but especially blues. You can play the coolest licks all over town, but if it's not fitting in with the rhythm, it'll sound bad. Okay, so the most important thing is to get that rhythm down. And the way I recommend doing that is recording yourself, or you can find on YouTube, for instance, someone playing just a progression. And just practice playing around with that scale along with the progression, okay? And that when I started learning blues stuff, that's what I did. I just recorded myself. This is back when it was cassette, and I don't know, I recorded myself playing the progression like 10 times in a row. And then I'd play it back, and I'd just sit there, practice playing the solos, playing the chord, playing the scale, playing hammer-ons and bends and pull-offs, and just kind of messing around with it and seeing how it fit. So that concludes this lesson. Next time, as I said on 2, we're going to talk a little bit about chords and how they fit in with the progression as well. Till next time.